Soldier chained, dying. K9, German Shepherd to a tree and left him for the wolves. Then a miracle happened. He had been loyal through war, through blood, through fire, but in the end, his reward was a rusted chain and a slow death beneath the trees. His name was Rocco, a decorated K9's German Shepherd abandoned by the very man he would have died for. Left tied to a tree in the freezing woods, wounded and without food, with nothing but the sound of distant wolves closing in. No one was coming, no one knew. Until something unexpected shattered the silence, and a miracle began to unfold. What happened next will restore your faith in second chances, in courage, and in the kind of loyalty that only a German Shepherd can carry in his heart. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. This helps us bring more emotional and powerful stories like this to you. Stories that remind us what loyalty, resilience, and true courage really look like. The snow was falling in slow, heavy flakes, and the forest was quiet in that haunting way only winter can make it. Rocco's breathing was shallow. His paws, once strong and fast across battlefields, now trembled against the frozen ground. A chain clinked lightly. Against the tree he was tied to. Thick, rusted metal that bit into the fur of his neck every time he shifted. He was alone. Truly alone. 3 days ago, he had been part of something. A K9 unit deployed to the Colorado border for a training exercise that had gone wrong. Shots fired. A retreat ordered. A decision made. Sergeant Wyatt Cole had looked him in the eye, blood staining his uniform, and whispered, "You won't survive the hike. I'm sorry, boy." He had wrapped a chain around the tree, clipped it to Rocco's collar, and walked away without looking back. Rocco didn't bark. He didn't growl. He didn't cry. He just watched the man he trusted vanish into the white. Now, the silence of the forest was closing in. His ribs showed beneath his matted coat. His right hind leg, injured in the explosion that shattered their base camp, was bent unnaturally. Flies buzzed near the wound, despite the cold. The pain was no longer sharp. It had faded into something distant, like a memory. Somewhere deep in the trees, a wolf howled. Rocco's ears twitched. Not in fear, in instinct. He knew what came next. He'd heard that sound before in his training, simulated danger, warnings, but this wasn't a drill. There were no commands to follow, no handler to protect, no safe house to return to, only snow, silence, and the chain. Miles away, in a nearby mountain town, a woman named Emily Voss was packing canned goods into the back of her Jeep. She wasn't a soldier. She wasn't even a rescuer. She was a wildlife biologist, one who'd been tracking a pack of gray wolves that had recently moved into the area. She had heard them again last night, closer than ever. Something about their pattern had changed. They were circling one spot, not hunting, hovering, like they were watching something, or someone. She couldn't shake the feeling. Something was wrong. So at sunrise, she loaded her Jeep with thermal gear, her binoculars, and a small medical kit she never thought she'd use for anything larger than a wounded bird. She wasn't sure what she expected to find. A dead deer? A trapped fox? Certainly not what she was about to see. By mid-afternoon, Emily had reached the edge of the frozen ravine. The trees were thick, the cold biting through her jacket, but the tracks in the snow were clear. Paw prints, both large and small. Wolf tracks. They circled a patch of woods near an old pine. She crouched low, trying to stay silent. And then she heard it. A low growl, weak, barely audible. Her heart jumped. She moved closer, slowly, stepping around a fallen branch. And that's when she saw him. A German Shepherd, massive, filthy, and broken, chained to a tree like an old bicycle someone had thrown away. His eyes met hers for just a second, dull and tired, but still alive. "Oh my God," she whispered, rushing forward. Rocco growled once, but it was half-hearted. There was no energy behind it. Emily dropped to her knees in the snow beside him, hands shaking. "Who did this to you?" He didn't move, just looked at her, as if waiting for something he no longer believed in. "I've got you," she said, pulling out a multi-tool from her pack. The chain was frozen, biting into his neck. She had to pry it loose slowly, careful not to hurt him more. And all the while, the trees around her remained silent, watching. She didn't know who this dog was. She didn't know what he'd been through, but she knew one thing for certain. He had been left for dead, and now she was his only chance to live. Emily's arms ached as she cradled the heavy German Shepherd against her chest, his body limp but still breathing. She had managed to lift him into the back of her Jeep, using a makeshift sling from a camping blanket and a few prayers. He hadn't resisted. He hadn't whimpered. He had simply laid there trusting her, or maybe just too broken to fight. The engine sputtered as she turned the key, the heater barely working. The snow had picked up again, swirling around the windshield as she pulled onto the narrow road back toward town. She kept glancing in the rearview mirror, watching the dog, watching him. He was more than a stray. She could see it in his scars, the way his body had once been muscle, but was now shadowed by starvation. This wasn't just any dog. This was a working dog. A soldier. She drove straight to the small animal clinic on the edge of town. It was after hours, but Dr. Fields lived above the practice. He opened the door in slippers, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Emily?" He blinked. "What on earth?" "I need your help," she said. "He's bad." The vet didn't hesitate. He helped her carry the dog inside, laying him gently on the exam table. Under the harsh fluorescent lights, his condition looked even worse. Lacerations around the neck. One leg possibly fractured, malnourished, severely dehydrated. And still, his eyes flickered open now and then, tracking their movements. "He's trained," Dr. Fields murmured, brushing the matted fur from Rocco's face. "Military, maybe." Emily nodded. "He was chained, abandoned. I found him near the edge of wolf territory." The vet's face darkened. "He shouldn't be alive." Emily swallowed the lump in her throat. "But he is." The vet administered fluids and pain meds, set the leg in a splint, and cleaned the worst of the wounds. Emily stayed the whole time, sitting on a cold stool, her hand resting gently near the shepherd's paw. She didn't touch him, not yet. Not until he told her it was okay. Hours passed. The snow turned to sleet outside, tapping lightly on the windows like whispers of ghosts. Around 4 a.m., the vet looked up from the clipboard. "He needs a name." Emily didn't hesitate. "Rocco." The name felt right, solid, strong, like the spirit she saw flickering behind those tired eyes. She took him home that morning, against the vet's cautious advice. But Emily had always trusted her gut, and something told her Rocco wouldn't survive another night in a steel cage under fluorescent lights. He needed silence, warmth, a heartbeat nearby. Her cabin was small but safe, tucked into the trees, far from the noise of the world. She made a bed near the fireplace, laid thick blankets down, and placed a bowl of water beside it. Rocco didn't move much. He was still sedated, but every now and then, his ears would twitch at the crackle of the fire. She sat across from him on the floor, legs folded under her, sipping tea and just watching. "Oh, who did this to you?" she whispered. She didn't expect an answer, of course, but somehow the question still mattered. Over the next 3 days, Rocco barely moved. He didn't eat much. He growled once when she accidentally dropped a mug, and the sound echoed too loudly. But when she whispered softly and knelt low, he didn't bare his teeth. He just looked at her. Curious. Wary. Not afraid, just waiting. On the fourth day, he tried to stand. His back legs buckled, and he collapsed again, panting hard. Emily rushed to his side but didn't touch him. "You don't have to prove anything," she said. "You're safe now." Rocco let out a breath. Not quite a whine, but something close to surrender. That night, he crawled, dragging himself inch by inch, until he was at the edge of her bed, and then he rested his head on the floor beside her, eyes fluttering closed. Emily looked down, hard and heavy, and full at once. Trust wasn't something Rocco gave freely. It was something earned. And maybe, just maybe, she was starting to earn it. It had been a week since Rocco came home with her, and Emily still hadn't heard him bark, not once. He didn't make noise when he heard squirrels on the porch, or when deer passed near the tree line at dusk. No warning growl, no protective stance, just a quiet gaze, a tilt of the ears, and that haunting silence that seemed to speak louder than sound. Emily was no dog trainer, but she was a listener, and Rocco was teaching her that silence held stories most people were too loud to hear. His body was healing slowly. The wounds on his neck were less raw. The swelling in his leg had gone down, and he could now limp short distances without collapsing. But there was still something in his eyes, something distant, watchful, heavy. Like a soldier who hadn't made it home, even though his body had. She kept her routine simple: warm meals, short walks to the clearing behind the cabin, rest by the fire. She talked to him softly as if he understood every word, and sometimes she swore he did. He'd tilt his head just so, or blink at just the right moment when she mentioned the word trust. One morning, while brushing out his coat, she found the faint tattoo inked beneath his ear. K9-01557, military, official. And suddenly it made sense. The way he scanned every room before entering, the way he froze when he heard helicopters overhead, the way his entire body went rigid at the sight of a man in uniform on TV. Rocco hadn't just been trained. He'd been through war. She made a call that afternoon to an old friend at a nearby veterans office, and by the next day, a name came back. Rocco, military K9 assigned to Sergeant Wyatt Cole, stationed in Syria, listed as retired and released. Released? Emily's stomach turned. That was the term they used when a handler no longer wanted responsibility for the dog. After the missions ended, after the medals were handed out, after the cameras left. She stared at the printout in her hand for a long time, her tea going cold beside her. Sergeant Cole had walked away from Rocco, not just in the woods, but in life. Later that night, she sat on the floor with Rocco's head resting against her knee. His eyes were closed, but his ears flicked every time she moved. "You saved people," she whispered. "You gave everything." She ran her hand slowly along his spine. "And he left you for the wolves." Rocco didn't move, but she felt it then, the smallest shift in his breathing, as if something inside him had stirred. "I won't do that," she said. "I don't care how broken you are. You're home now, and you don't owe anyone anything ever again." For the first time, his tail twitched. Once. Just a small flick. And it was enough. The next morning, she took him to the edge of the woods. The snow had melted into soft mud and pine needles, and Rocco walked beside her, still limping, but steadier now. When they reached the clearing, she dropped his leash. He didn't run, didn't bolt, just stood there, ears alert, nose twitching at the wind. Emily sat on a log, waiting. After a few moments, Rocco walked forward. Not far, just to the edge of the clearing where the forest grew darker. He stood there quiet, and then he lifted his head and barked. It wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was low, steady, powerful. The kind of bark that says, "I'm still here." Emily froze, her heart catching in her chest. Rocco turned, limped back to her, and sat at her feet. And for the first time since she found him, he laid his head on her lap willingly. No chain, no command, just choice. And maybe, just maybe, healing had begun. Spring had begun to stretch across the mountains. The snow had melted, giving way to damp earth and stubborn blades of green pushing through frost-bitten soil. For the first time in weeks, Emily left the front door open while she worked in the garden. Rocco rested in the sun just a few feet away, his eyes half closed, ears still alert. He had gained weight. His limp had softened. And more than once, Emily had caught him trotting through the yard, tail lifted in quiet confidence. It wasn't just his body that was healing, it was something deeper. But just as the earth wakes from winter, so do ghosts. It happened on a Thursday afternoon. Emily had taken Rocco to the vet for a follow-up appointment. The drive into town was smooth, uneventful. The vet was amazed by his recovery. "He's a miracle," Dr. Fields said, patting Rocco's side. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." She smiled proudly and walked out with her hand resting gently on Rocco's back. They stopped at the local feed store afterward. Emily tied Rocco outside briefly to pick up a bag of dog food. He waited, calm as ever. But when she stepped back through the door, her heart froze. A man was standing beside him. Tall, military build. Late 30s. A weathered jawline and short-cropped hair. He wasn't petting Rocco, just staring at him, his expression unreadable. Rocco was stiff, alert, eyes locked. Emily approached, fast. "Can I help you?" The man looked up, surprised. "Sorry, just didn't expect to see him here." Emily narrowed her eyes. "Do you know him?" A pause. Then a slow nod. "Yeah. That dog's name is Rocco. He used to be mine." The words hit her like a slap. "You're Sergeant Cole." He nodded again. Emily stepped between them. "You left him, chained to a tree, to die." "I didn't have a choice," he replied quickly. "He was injured. I didn't think he'd make it. The evac was rushed. I made a call." "You made a coward's call?" He winced, but didn't argue. "I came back a day later," he said. "He was gone. I thought wolves got him. I blamed him myself every day since." Rocco hadn't moved. He just watched. Not with fear, not even with hate, but with distance. Like he recognized a chapter from a life he no longer lived in. "He doesn't belong to you anymore," Emily said. Cole nodded slowly. "I'm not here to take him. I just needed to see if he was okay. That's all." Emily didn't respond. She didn't have to. She untied Rocco's leash, walked past the man, and Rocco followed. Not because of a command, but because he wanted to. They drove home in silence. Emily's hands trembled on the steering wheel the whole way. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat by the fire, staring at the flames, wondering if Cole would come back, wondering if he was telling the truth, wondering if Rocco would have rather gone with him. But then she felt it. The weight of Rocco's head resting gently on her foot. She looked down. He was watching her. Not anxious, not restless, just present, like he had chosen. And that mattered more than anything. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that the past wasn't done with them yet, that this was only the beginning. 2 days passed without a sign of Sergeant Cole. Emily tried to move on, keeping her focus on Rocco, whose spirit continued to grow stronger with each passing day. He had started wagging his tail in the mornings, greeting her at the door when she returned from errands. He would sit at the edge of her porch in the evening, head held high, scanning the forest like a silent guardian. But the calm didn't last. On the 3rd day, a white government vehicle pulled up to the edge of her mowed gravel driveway. 2 men in dark jackets stepped out. Not police, not military, but something in between. One of them wore a badge, Department of Defense, Canine Recovery Division. Emily's stomach dropped. "Are you Emily Voss?" the older man asked. "Yes," she answered cautiously. "What is this about?" "We're here about the dog." She stepped onto the porch, placing herself in front of Rocco, who had already risen and stood rigid behind her. "He's not going anywhere." The younger agent stepped forward. "We're not here to take him, at least not yet. We're here to ask a few questions." Emily crossed her arms. "Such as?" The older agent pulled out a folder, flipping it open. Inside was a dossier, marked classified in bold red. At the top was Rocco's ID number. Underneath, a line that chilled her. Subject was part of Project Sentinel. Emily frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" The agent hesitated. Then he said, Rocco wasn't just a canine on patrol. He was part of a specialized intelligence program, trained for more than combat. He was designed to track biological threats, classified targets. He's been exposed to materials no civilian should be near. Emily blinked. "Are you telling me he's dangerous?" "We're telling you he might be," the younger man replied. "And if he's experiencing any neurological symptoms, aggression, unpredictability, confusion, we need to know." She looked down at Rocco. Calm, alert, focused. He's shown nothing but loyalty, strength, patience. "He was abandoned in combat conditions," the older agent said. "Left for dead. That alone can cause deep trauma in dogs, let alone one with his training. Are you sure you're prepared for that kind of responsibility?" Emily didn't flinch. "I didn't chain him to a tree. I pulled him off it." The agents exchanged a glance. The older one sighed. "Look," he said, softening slightly. "If he's stable, if he poses no risk, we'll close the file. But you need to understand something. The military doesn't forget dogs like him. They're valuable, which means people may come looking. People who won't knock on your door first." He handed her a business card. "If anything changes, call us. And Emily, thank you for what you did." The Jeep disappeared into the trees moments later. Emily stood in the doorway for a long time, card in hand, heart pounding. Inside, Rocco had settled again by the fire, but something about his eyes had changed. He had watched the whole thing, and when she looked at him, something unspoken passed between them. He knew. He remembered everything, and the scars he carried weren't just on his body. They ran deeper, into training, into secrets, into wars the world would never hear about. Later that night, she sat beside him, whispering as she had the night she brought him home, "I don't care what you were trained for, or what they think you are. You're mine now, and I'm yours." He lifted his head, rested it gently in her lap, and for the first time since she'd met him, she felt the weight of his past settle and begin to lift. The days that followed were quieter, but the tension never truly faded. Emily noticed it in the way Rocco began to pace near the windows at night, his ears twitching at every unfamiliar sound. He still ate, still slept beside her, still laid his head in her lap. But something in him had shifted since the agents came. He was waiting for something, watching. And then, one evening, that something came. It was just after dusk when the sound of a car engine broke the forest silence. Not the familiar hum of a mail truck or a neighbor's old pickup, but something low, heavy, deliberate. Emily looked out the window and saw a matte black SUV parked at the bottom of the driveway. Its lights were off. She grabbed her coat and stepped outside. Rocco followed her immediately. And there he was, standing in front of the vehicle like he'd been waiting for this moment all along. Sergeant Wyatt Cole. "Emily," he called out, hands raised slightly. "I need to talk to him." "He's not yours anymore," she replied coldly. "I know," Cole said, voice cracking. But I think they're coming. Not just the government, others. Emily narrowed her eyes. Who? The same people who funded the program he was part of. Private contractors, intelligence brokers. They know he survived. They want the dog, not for what he is now, but for what he remembers. Rocco stood still beside her, tail stiff, body alert. He has something he gets something they need, Cole continued. Coordinates, habits. He was part of a recon experiment, trained to memorize terrain, facial patterns, chemical markers, all without leaving digital traces. Emily's breath caught in her throat. They're not just coming for him, Cole added. They're coming for you. The weight of his words dropped into the silence like a stone. What do we do? Emily asked. Cole looked at Rocco. He still responds to certain codes. I can activate a shutdown protocol. Wipe everything he was trained to remember. If we don't, they'll never stop. Not until he's in a lab. Or worse. Emily looked at Rocco, who stared at Cole without blinking. No, she said firmly. Cole frowned. What? You don't wipe a soul just because it holds memories. You don't erase someone's life to make yours more convenient. It's not about convenience, he snapped. It's about safety. Emily stepped forward. You lost the right to speak for his safety the moment you walked away and left him for dead. Cole's shoulders sagged. I made a mistake, he said. I thought I was doing the right thing, and I've regretted it every day since. I didn't come here to take him back. I came here to fix what I broke. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Rocco stepped forward. He walked slowly, deliberately, until he was standing directly in front of Cole. Emily held her breath. Cole knelt. Rocco, he whispered, stand down. Nothing. Rocco, return. Rocco blinked slowly, then did something neither of them expected. He turned his back on Cole and walked back to Emily. Not because he didn't understand, but because he did. He was no longer a soldier. He was free. Cole lowered his head, the weight of that choice sinking in tin bowl. He's not mine anymore, he whispered. No, Emily replied. But you can still help protect him. Cole stood up. How? Emily looked him in the eyes. By warning them. By making sure they know what kind of fight they're in for if they come here. A silence passed. Then Cole nodded once. I'll handle it. He got back in his vehicle. The engine started. And this time, he didn't drive away like a coward. He drove away like a man who had been forgiven. Inside the cabin, Rocco returned to his place by the fire. Emily sat beside him, running her hand through his fur. Whatever you were trained to do, whoever you used to be, you're not just a weapon. He let out a long, slow breath. You're a survivor, and you're home. The men never came. Maybe Cole warned them, or maybe Rocco's silence spoke louder than anything they could extract. Either way, peace held. Spring turned to summer, and the forest bloomed around the cabin like it was reclaiming what had once been broken. Rocco no longer flinched at helicopters. He ran now. Not fast, not far, but free. And one morning, without prompting, he jumped onto Emily's bed, curled beside her, and let out a quiet sigh. She smiled, eyes closed, whispering, You stayed. He had. The scars faded, but never disappeared. Emily still saw them when he slept, legs twitching, dreams pulled him back into places she'd never fully understand. But now, when he woke from those dreams, he looked for her, and she was always there. She taught him games. He taught her silence. They didn't need leashes anymore. They didn't need to speak to know. They had chosen each other. That was louder than any command ever given. Years passed. Rocco grew gray around the muzzle, slower in the joints, but never in spirit, On his final day, the fire crackled gently, and Emily laid on the floor beside him, her hand on his chest. He looked at her one last time with the same calm loyalty he had shown from the start. No pain, no fear, just peace. And when he took his last breath, the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full. Full of every mile he walked to find her. Full of every miracle that happened the day she found him. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Share it with someone who believes in second chances, for both people and dogs.